will be different formats, and it's important for you to understand what the expectations are within your particular degree program. You actually have to actively think about what you wrote, and you might see where there are some logical flaws or inconsistencies in terms of the work that you prepared. And I might stop to see if they give a nod or they give a frown, because that is all the signal they're communicating something. And then I'm going to come back and be able to unpack things. This is something that I think you should always do. It also helps you to pace yourself. You're not panicking about the possibility of forgetting some important points. And it also then just gives you time to think through what your response is going to be. So let's talk about the thesis or dissertation defense, what is actually involved and what sort of things can you do to prepare and give yourself your best chance. The first and most important thing that you must establish is in what format does your defense come and at what stage are you expected to do the defense. So I speak to people who say they have to defend a research proposal already and they're going to have to defend a submitted dissertation. I also know of people who have to defend a thesis before they actually ultimately submit it. So there will be different formats, and it's important for you to understand what the expectations are within your particular degree program. And then after that, you also have to understand the format in which it takes place. So some defenses that I have seen start with the person giving a presentation. So in front of an audience or in front of your examining panel, you are going to just give an overview of this is what the work is about. These are the key findings and these are the key conclusions. And then after that, they open the floor to questions. So know in what format your your defense is going to take place. Know at what stage or stages as part of your research journey it's going to take place. And then this allows you to prepare as best as you can. So if I would give my top tips in terms of what you do in relation to that, I would say I'm going to say 6 tips. The first one is that whether or not you are expected to do a presentation, make a presentation in preparation for your defense. What the presentation does is that it's going to help you to see any logical flaws in terms of how you are structuring your thinking, but also in terms of some of the key claims that you are making. And if you make this presentation post-submission, then one of the things that it can help you with is being prepared for the sort of questions that you're going to get. Like if you think, oh my God, I don't think actually that this argument is consistent with the conclusion that I made, then it's likely that someone is going to pick that up and you're going to have to be able to justify or explain or think through it as part of the defense process. So I always like making the PowerPoint presentations because for the first time, you actually have to actively think about what you wrote, and you might see where there are some logical flaws or inconsistencies in terms of the work that you prepared. And then this allows you to already prepare for the types of questions that might be coming. So whether or not you are expected to prepare a presentation, the first step, I think, is to prepare that presentation and be ready for any questions that you might get. And then after that, always have a mock defense. So get together a bunch of friends. They're probably peers. If you're doing your master's, they're MSc students themselves. If some of them already graduated and they've gone through a defense, also bring them along. If it's a PhD, you've probably been to a few yourself, so you might know what to expect. But bring that bunch of friends in a room and actually do some role playing. So get them to ask you questions as though they were the panel, because this becomes an opportunity for you to rehearse the answer that is going to give you your best chance in terms of being able to demonstrate that you understand the work that you have actually done. So mock defenses are great. When I defended my PhD, this was the first instance that I had to do a defense for a dissertation. And I did get friends. Some of them had already obtained their PhDs. Many of us had already been to PhD defenses, and they helped me with a lot of things, including things where I could have made an idiot of myself. Like, oh, these are the basic rules when you do a PhD defense in the Netherlands, right? So they are going to say, I don't know, I don't remember the terminology, but I always had to say highly esteemed so and so when I respond to the professor. But there's some salutations that we use as part of the ritual. A full professor gets a different salutation than an associate professor, and so on. And if I had not done that rehearsal, I would not have known that there's actually this particular nuance, and I would have made a fool of myself during the defense. So the mock defense helps you to actually understand those things and to be on point, where as far as it depends on you, you can do it, right? So my salutations were on point. I always started each statement by saluting, acknowledging the person that asked me the question. I also got some questions. So people gave me tips like, there are people who just always run on this one question. It's like, it's something that they are passionate about. And I did get the type of question, and I recognized it as such when I got it. And so how I navigated it was different from how I navigated the rest of the questions. So a mock defense is an opportunity for you to polish up your act, to show up looking like a real, true professional. And also for you to think through something. So if there's a question that you struggle with during the mock defense, you get an opportunity to prepare for it better as part of the final show, right? And also there were tips that I got, including the third tip that I'm going to give you now. I got it from the mock defense. As people ask you questions, write down the main points of that question, right? So break it down into the main things that they are looking for, and also already start thinking about your response. Structure your thoughts so that you respond in a way that is going to have the most impact. Like, I really like starting with the most powerful thing when I give a response, and then I go to the less important things, and then I wrap it up again by going back to the beginning and showing, like, it's a way of showing like how much I understand in terms of nuance and the things that matter. So writing questions down is good because it gives you a chance to really capture what the main points are in terms of the questions that you're being asked. It gives you an opportunity to think about how you structure your thoughts, but it also makes you come across as good. Like, if people are talking and you are writing, it actually looks like you are listening better than when you're not. So during the mock defense, I was just sitting there waiting for the questions and then answering. They were like, no, it doesn't look good on you. And I do agree. Like, now when I watch back my defense and they were asking questions and I was writing things down, it really looks good. So this is something that I think you should always do. It also helps you to pace yourself. You're not panicking about the possibility of forgetting some important points. And it also then just gives you time to think through what your response is going to be. So I will also say, maybe 4, wrapped with writing down the questions, is also structuring your thoughts. Structure your response so that you start with the most powerful thing and work your way down the list to those things that matter less. And sometimes you can also use this opportunity. You just keep an eye on your audience. If you're on point 4 and it looks like they've lost interest, then don't go on to give them 5, 6, and 7, right? Because it's like, okay, I already gave them the most important thing. They're satisfied now. Mentally, they have moved on. So who am I to keep them in these trenches? Let's just move on to the next thing, right? So trying to read the people that are asking you questions and trying to see when they're satisfied so that you don't waste time, because in the end it might become fluff and you might lose all the great impressions that you made in the beginning. So I always try to read like what those people are, where they are mentally, and whether I've done enough to stop and move on. And then another thing that I think is important, 5, really take your time when it comes to responding. There's no rush, so there's no rule about how many questions you get asked. There usually will be rules about how long it goes on for, or they might also have rules that they will just go for as long as they need. That's just fine. But the more you rush yourself, the more you are likely to make mistakes and the more you are likely to miss things. So in addition to writing things down and structuring your thoughts, if you need to pause just to process what was said, take that pause. It's fine. People are going to get used to it soon enough. So don't feel like you're in a rush. If that silence makes you uncomfortable, then always start off with things like thanking them for the question. Or you might also just try to clarify if this is what they're asking, because sometimes it does happen that you are not sure exactly what they are asking for. So you also have a right during the defense to ask them to clarify what they mean, or to ask them to confirm that the way you have understood the question is how they intended for it to be asked. And then you're going to get time in order to do things. And another thing that I always find useful is to be able to start to state your assumptions, right? So if someone says, oh, looking at the key literature that you have reviewed, can you say blah? Then I will say, okay, so by key literature, I assume you are referring to these particular individuals or this particular group of authors. And this might be why I think you are referring to them. And I might stop to see if they give a nod or they give a frown, because that is all the signal. They're communicating something. And then I'm going to come back and be able to unpack things. So once my assumptions are made explicit to my audience, this also always helps in terms of how they make the judgment call. Finally, and this is so important, even though we are calling it a thesis or dissertation defense, you are not there to defend your ideas, right? So you are not there to die on the heel of whatever conclusion you drew in that manuscript, right? But you are there to defend your intellectual strength. If somebody would ask you a question, or they would point to an error in the piece of work that you wrote, and they have a fair point, you are not there to try to sort of minimize the point that they are making, or to try to still justify something that is difficult to justify. So if you would have done the PowerPoint presentation, you would already know what some of these things will be. If you have done the mock defense, you might also even know what more of those things are, but you don't offer them up to them, right? So you don't already start saying, yeah, and then I made this mistake. You don't do that. But if they say you made this mistake, then you have to own it. Oh, yes, certainly, I think, I don't know, maybe it was an error in judgment, or I hadn't thought through this. But one of the best things that you can do for yourself during a defense is to show that you can think through a problem if certain parameters change. And there are a lot of people who like to ask these questions in hypotheticals, right? Like they will say, imagine you had interviewed this group of people, and you haven't done that. How do you think talking to these people could have changed your results or your insights? So you're being invited to think on your feet, to show that you have become expert enough in a problem to be able to play around with different scenarios in your head, right? Or if they say, okay, you went and collected this data, but we don't think that this method is a fit, right? Sometimes you might have to yield and say, yes, now that you say it, or as I have been thinking about this over the last few days, I do see that this method was not the best fit. And here are the reasons why this method was not the best fit. That said, I will also have to say, okay, these were the constraints that I was facing that sort of pushed me towards this method. But not making that an excuse. If I were be able to do things differently, this is how I would have done it. And potentially this is how my results would have changed. And then you are doing well. So remember that you are not defending the ideas that you already put on paper. It's a rather very dynamic interaction, and anything can change. But you are trying to defend the idea that you have become an expert, and you can think through the different things that come along with that. Once you do that, I think you are going to have an enjoyable defense. A bonus tip, you will always start off nervous. So the first few minutes are going to be shaky. That's fine. When I'm nervous, I speak very fast. So when I look back at my PhD defense, like the first couple of minutes I was speaking fast, and then when I calm down and I forget and I'm not so conscious about everything that is going on around me, then the speech is slower, my breathing is more controlled, I speak a bit more clearly, people can follow me, and that is fine. So I accept now, like, until I'm not so nervous, I'm going to be speaking a bit faster than I should be. Now I still try to at least be in control of my thought processes and still be able to present things coherently, because that's one thing that I can control, but I really cannot control my nervous reaction. I accept it, I own it, it's what it is, and I know past that point, things are going to get really much, much better, and it's going to be enjoyable. So don't look upon the defense as something that you should be terrified of. If you've actually put in the work and you actually know the literature, your own analysis, like the back of your hand, whatever they throw at you, you will be fine, because you can also think in a dynamic way about the things that you have done. And it's quite possible that they may not ask you about what you wrote, but they might ask you about what you could have written and all those things. If you actually really did the work and you really became the expert, it's nothing to worry about. You're going to be fine. I haven't done this outro in a long time, so I'm going to do it. I'm Dr. Noni Extra. Follow me to find the joy in academic writing and discover your real potential. Happy writing.